Hey guys, this is Andrew from Bar Health and Fitness, and today we are continuing our discussion on how to train your glutes. So far, we've looked at the structure and function of glute med or gluteus medius, and we've also discussed the importance of glute activation and how to include this in your warm-ups. Today, in the third and final part of the series, I'm going to be talking about how to train glute strength, easily the most important and most interesting part of glute training. Whatever your training goal is, it's really easy to justify spending quite a bit of time in a weekly training cycle focusing on developing glute strength. Glutes are extensors of the hip, meaning that they bring your leg from out in front of you to either right below you or back behind you. And that means that movements that involve that are the exercises that will train your glutes. Here are some of my favorite exercises, some of the best exercises for developing glute strength. Just remember to do your glute activation drills before you dive into these. Starting off with squats, one of the major movement components of a squat, any squat, is hip extension. When you're in the bottom of the movement, your thighs are out in front of you. As you come up to standing, they're right below you. That's hip extension, and the glutes are involved. To get a little bit more emphasis on the glutes when you're doing your squat, think about pushing through your heels. That just helps activate the entire posterior chain, and it's always helped me feel like I'm getting a little bit more of a contraction through glute max as I'm doing the standing phase of the movement. If squatting is new to you, then I would encourage you to spend some time working on the goblet squat, which involves holding a dumbbell or a kettlebell right up against your chest and really working your way up in that weight until you're able to do something between 80 and 100 pounds. And if you think that's beyond the realm of reasonable for you, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't bother looking at a barbell back squat, which is a fabulous exercise, and people who can do them, I think, should. But they're just advanced, and it's not a good place to start with your squat training. So work on your goblet squats, push through your heels, develop your glutes, save your back. Hamstrings develop your entire posterior chain, and though the hamstrings are usually the prime mover, glutes are heavily involved. Depending on factors such as your flexibility, your height, the architecture of your hip, you might have more success with a Romanian deadlift, which minimizes knee bending, a conventional deadlift, or a sumo deadlift that involves a wider stance and more toe turnout. Whichever style of deadlift suits you best, and the factors that would dictate that are numerous and are beyond the scope of this short video, deadlifts are a great way to develop glute strength. Similar to the squat, it's a good idea to develop proficiency in these movements with smaller weights provided by a dumbbell or a kettlebell before progressing to the barbell variations that allow you to train with heavier weights. Any good strength training program should include a variation of a squat and a deadlift. But in this context of training the glutes, if you're coming into these movements with some sort of imbalance, maybe you have glute inhibition, in which case keep doing those activation drills. Maybe your hamstrings are super tight. Maybe you just have some kind of imbalance in that posterior chain. Squatting and deadlifting alone isn't going to be enough to fix that imbalance. So to do that, we need to do some work specifically targeting the glutes. Here are two exercises that do just that. The hip thrust. I love the hip thrust because it's awesome for developing glute strength, and it really doesn't put hardly any pressure on your knees at all, which is a great bonus. The issue with the hip thrust is that the setup can be a little bit awkward, maybe a little bit complicated. If this is a new exercise, then simply stabilizing a small dumbbell or kettlebell on your pelvis will achieve the desired training effect. But for more advanced lifters, you're going to need to use either strength bands or a heavy barbell with some sort of padding, either an RX pad or a squat sponge or whatever, in the middle of the bar to protect your hips. Keys to a good hip thrust involve just be careful of the positioning of your neck. You want to be looking forwards as you come down and then looking upwards as you come up. Maintain a bit of a chin tuck, a bit of a double chin throughout. Focus on digging through the heels. Doesn't matter too much on how low you go into the depth. There's benefits for going all the way down to the ground, benefits for going halfway. You can play with that. Focusing on coming up to that full hip extension, really squeezing the glutes at the top, and then making sure that you're actually doing hip extension and not overextending the back. That's a difficult thing to do on your own. That's the sort of thing that a coach can help you with, but it is something to bear in mind. If you want to learn more about the hip thrust, I would encourage you to check out the work of Brett Contreras, who's certainly the person most responsible for popularizing this exercise. He's got dozens of videos on technique and really gives some great ideas on how to fine-tune the hip thrust. The rear foot elevated split squat, also called the Bulgarian split squat or the Bulgarian lunge, is exactly what it sounds like. Your rear foot is elevated on a bench. The exact height of the bench depends a little bit on your height, but for most people, a standard bench that you'd find in any gym is a good place to start. And your front leg is completing the same action that it would in a lunge or in a split squat. You're moving straight up and down, shoulders stay stacked over the hips, you push through the heel, and you'll notice that the glute in the front leg is working quite hard, in addition to the quad as well. You might need to use some padding on the bench, and one thing that's important with this exercise is to keep that elevated leg nice and relaxed, not to dig your toe down into the surface of it too much. If this is a brand new exercise for you, then your body weight will be just fine. And then to begin progressing, you can hold a dumbbell or a kettlebell in your same side hand as the rear leg, just hanging at your side, or you can hold it at the chest, goblet style, which is my preferred option. There are also interesting overhead variations that you can do and eventually progress to doing this exercise with either a bar on your back or within a trap bar. But again, those are advanced variations. So those are 4 strength-based exercises that you can start doing to help develop glute strength. A couple key points and takeaways is note the nature of the exercises. These are all designed so that as you get stronger, it's fairly easy to add additional weight to continue to make strength progress. And this is very much the point. The goal is to get stronger. And to do that, we need to continue to lift heavier and heavier things. These exercises, squatting, deadlifting, hip thrusting, rear foot elevated, split squat, are going to do a lot more for developing strength in your lower body than, say, doing the stuff like when you're on, I don't know, force kicking your leg back behind you, little like toning type movements. I'm not saying that you can't do those, but they should be an accessory. Maybe leave them to the end of your training session after you've done at least 2 strength-based exercises where you're working in a standard training rep zone, whether it's 3 sets of 10 or 5 sets of 5, depending on your training goal. Even if your primary outcome, the thing that you want the most, is that aesthetic, you want a nice butt, strength training is going to get you a lot closer than anything else. All right, guys, I hope you found today's video useful. Hopefully you can take some of these exercises and get them into your own training routine. And if you want to learn more about my training and coaching programs, head on over to barhealth.com and check that out.